Most people are aware of the Doomslayer and his crusade against Hell, but what most people aren't aware of is that he's not the only person to actually fight demons. Essentially, he's not the only Doom guy. Let's talk about it. The most obvious example of this are the Knight Sentinels, a highly advanced warrior order that was part of a race called the Argenta. This militaristic force was the sword of their people, and through their conquest, they were able to traverse the stars. This was likely where humanity originated from. One day, an outsider randomly appeared in their midst. This strange man, eventually known as the Slayer, babbled incessantly about monstrous forces, evil entities from an ancient, powerful, and horrific dimension called Hell. Despite his warnings, they were still unprepared when the very creatures the stranger spoke of invaded their lands from enormous portals, or slipgates. Hundreds upon thousands of the violent beasts laid siege to the Argenta's strongholds, but each time they would be met in battle by the unknown man and the Knight Sentinels. The ferocity of the stranger served as a luminous beacon of hope to all in their number, and with him at the front of their line, they fought hard against the demons. It's unclear just how many of them fell in battle, but regardless of the exact number, it was too many. The outsider was strong, and their warriors were deadly, but Hell's forces were unending in both their numbers and their cruelty. Aside from the outsider, or the Slayer, at least one other man continued to survive against their adversary. His name was Valen, and his combat prowess seemingly usurped all or most of those that were a part of the Knight Sentinels. Though Doomguy was already a more than competent fighter when he was integrated into Argentan society, Valen trained him in their ways. The Slayer was a force to be reckoned with, but thanks to the things he learned from Valen, he became all the more deadly. His mentor was a great fighter, and much like the Slayer, many of the beasts fell before his arsenal. His son would eventually serve in the war against Hell too, but sadly he was slain. This death racked his heart with grief, and in these moments of weakness, the demons took advantage of him. If you want to know more about the false promises of Hell, as well as how Valen and a few others were fooled by the demons, check out my video on the subject after this. This is all fairly common knowledge to most Doom lore enjoyers, so with the obvious out of the way, let's delve into the bit more obscure. Long before the Slayer joined the ranks of the Knight Sentinels, he was a normal soldier on Earth. Much like any other individual that joins the Marines, he first had to undergo some kind of boot camp and training regiments. His instructor was a particularly capable woman simply named Crash. It was thanks to his training with her that he was able to slaughter the forces of Hell on the moons of Mars sometime later. This unsung hero helped transform Doomguy into a one-man death machine, and in a way was instrumental in the many defeats of Hell as a result. Her abilities to convert others into fighters didn't go unnoticed. In fact, dark forces beyond human comprehension took an unfortunate liking to her. Hell may be the most well-known evil within Doom's multiverse, but other, perhaps darker forces exist as well. Specifically, eldritch gods called the Vadrigar. What their relationship to Hell is, if there is one, is unclear. Though they may have no connection to the fiery dimension, their behavior is equally as insidious. Some of these entities created a magical place beyond time, simply known as the Arena Eternal. Much like Hell, these realms are nexuses to all realities. Within them were many different locales, but each served one singular purpose. It was to act as a battleground for the multiverse's greatest fighters. Oftentimes against their will, heroes and villains from across different dimensions were plucked from their homes and pit against one another in an endless string of violent games. The only way to win was to kill your opponents, but despite how many times someone fell, they would simply be resurrected and made to fight once more. Many courageous beings were abducted for this purpose, one of which just so happened to be Crash. Why these games were created isn't exactly clear, but it's safe to assume they are held for the Vadrigar's twisted amusement. Crash's given job in the Arena Eternal was to act as an instructor for newly acquired combatants. Whenever a new being was indoctrinated into the Vadrigar's war games, they were first faced against Crash. It seemed as though this was to be her fate, from training one of the most deadly warriors of all time with Doomguy to being permanently forced to do the same with many others. Her whereabouts as of now are unclear, but sadly, she's more than likely still locked away in the Arena Eternal. Though she doesn't appear to have ever actually fought the demons, I still believe she was worth mentioning, strictly because of the impact she had. Following a brief altercation with a superior officer, Doomguy was eventually shipped off to the moons of Mars, just prior to the demons' invasion of the Red Planet. As you probably know, the creatures were eviscerated by him before he eventually made his way back to Earth. In the time leading up to that, many of his brothers and sisters in arms fought and fell to the hellish onslaught. Their bodies litter the haunted halls of the Mars bases and Hell itself. One of these soldiers went by the moniker of Phobos. Captain Eldon Brock was an officer, gentleman, and longtime veteran with impressive fighting prowess. It was because of these traits that he was sent to Phobos after Doomguy had already been through the facility. His job, along with several other Marines, was to eliminate any stragglers that Doomguy may have missed. The rest of his team had other orders, but what exactly they were is not known. In the end, his so-called friends betrayed him. The UAC, the company responsible for opening the portals to Hell in the first place, believed that they could glean more information from watching him die rather than studying the reports of his success. How his supposed compatriots sabotaged him is never described. Much like Crash, the Vadrigar took an interest in Eldon, and so he was abducted and forced to participate in the sick games held within the Arena Eternal. It's also unclear if Eldon was actually killed by the demons or not, but it seems more likely that he was merely captured moments before his death. It's worth mentioning that he likely knew Crash prior to his abduction, but what their relationship was has never been revealed. His current fate is unknown, but it seems as though he's been doomed to fight within the Arena Eternal for the foreseeable future. Within the vastness of the multiverse exists multiple realities that are different but similar to one another. Doomguy's original timeline, the universe in which Crash and Eldon originally called home, is one such reality. Another is the universe in which Doom 3 resides. Its connection to the greater multiverse is vague, to say the least, but two definitive possibilities exist. 1. Doom 3 exists within its very own reality, separate from any touched by the Doom Slayer. 2. It exists within the same universe that is home to the Night Sentinels, simply placing it just prior to the events of Doom 2016. Either is plausible, but this is a topic for an altogether different video. If you recall what I mentioned earlier about Hell serving as a nexus point for other realities, then you probably know where this is going. Much like the classic universe containing the narratives of Doom 1993, Doom 2, and Doom 64, this particular plane of earthly existence had its own version of the UAC. Their purpose and behavior, however, was exactly the same. Leveraging their vast resources, they were able to conduct just about any experiment they wanted. They had their own militaristic force, infinite pockets, and insatiable greed. One of their experiments led to an invasion by Hell's forces. Much like the Slayer in his home dimension, one man would rise to the occasion and successfully fight back against the brutal hellish onslaught. The Doom Marine arrived on Mars just before the demonic forces began their attack. A slew of strange and disturbing accidents had led to the death of several scientists and soldiers. He served as a replacement for one of the dead or incapacitated warriors. Why he specifically was sent on this particular mission is never revealed, but suffice it to say, he was the only man for the job. When the demons finally invaded, their ferocity was matched only by his own. In a series of events that would make even the mighty Slayer proud, the Doom Marine fought his way through the monstrosities within the Mars base and eventually into their home dimension. Using a powerful artifact left behind by an ancient Martian civilization called the Soul Cube, he was able to repel Hell's forces, slaying one of their greatest warriors in one-on-one combat. A breed of particularly tough and horrific cyber demon. As the beast fell, the Soul Cube was seemingly lost in an effort to close a gateway Hell planned to use to launch a much larger invasion on the people of Earth. Once the portal was sealed, the Doom Marine was somehow transported back to Mars, where he was collected and escorted by fellow soldiers. His current whereabouts are unknown. Shortly after the Doom Marine closed the portal to Hell, another batch of soldiers arrived at the facility. Under new leadership, the UAC worked to discern what had happened during the previous invasion, and in so doing, accidentally stumbled upon a demonic artifact that had been sealed away by the lost Martian civilization. One Marine in particular, an engineer, interacted with it, unintentionally triggering yet another demonic invasion. A UAC scientist by the name of Malcolm Betruger had fallen for the demon's false promises and was currently MIA after the first invasion. As it turns out, he had been granted immense power by Hell, becoming a demonic overlord known as Maledict. Once the artifact had been activated by the Marine engineer, a beacon of sorts seems to have been sent out to Betruger. In response, he sent 3 powerful demons to hunt down the engineer that was unlucky enough to touch the strange object, an item that would come to be known as the Heart of Hell. It possessed great power, and if the demons regained possession of it, their invasion would be unavoidable. The beasts he sent after the engineer were simply referred to as Hell Hunters, but like the Doom guys before him, he wasn't about to let them invade without a fight. He slaughtered the hunters one by one, and eventually made his way to the molten shores in an attempt to confront the Maledict. After a hard-fought battle, the lone Marine was eventually victorious in defeating the once-human scientist by literally force-feeding him the Heart of Hell. The power was so absolute that once he consumed it, he quickly perished as a result, destroying the artifact along with him. After the death of Betruger, the invasion seemingly had been completely and totally quelled, and much like the Marine before him, the engineer was transported back to his reality. Again, his whereabouts following these events are not known. One other brave Marine fought valiantly within this conflict as well. This particular soldier was a part of a unit called Bravo Team, a group that was believed to have been wiped out during the initial Hell invasion. For the most part, that was true. They had been killed, all but one man. Moments after his comrades fell, he was quickly given a new mission by one of the surviving scientists within the Mars base. As it turns out, one of the portals the UAC had been using to access Hell was still active elsewhere, and if it wasn't closed, they would continue their invasion. With great effort, the Bravo Marine followed the scientists' instructions and eventually made it to the portal they sought. You can probably guess by now that the lone soldier did exactly what he set out to do. He made his way into Hell, killed a beast known as a Guardian of Hell, and shut down the portal. Doom RPG seems to pick up right where the first invasion in Doom 3 left off. It's unclear whether or not the Marine sent to this Mars outpost is one of the previous protagonists, so I'll keep things brief just in case he is. Once he arrived, another demonic invasion had begun, this time by an entity known as Kronos. Unsurprisingly, the Marine eviscerated the evil beast and ended the invasion. If you want to know more about Doom RPG and its story, let me know in the comments. I can do a future video if you'd like. When several distress calls originating from an outpost on Earth's moon were picked up by the UAC, 3 capable individuals were sent in to investigate. Major Kira Morgan, Stan Blazkowicz, and a scientist named Riley O'Connor. When they arrived, the horrible truth was revealed to them. The outpost had been besieged by demonic forces, and it was up to the 3 of them to repel the beasts. I'm sure you're sensing a pattern by now. They did exactly that, even going as far as to make their way into Hell. Much like the brave individuals before them, they fought hard and eventually discovered the source of this particular invasion. The icon of sin had somehow created a virtual representation of itself, akin to an AI. Naturally, it was planning on instigating a full-blown invasion on the earthly dimension, but the 3 heroes stopped the entity short. Before anyone asks, yes, one of the heroes is named Stan Blazkowicz. You heard that correctly. But how or if he's related to BJ from the Wolfenstein games isn't exactly clear. Abraham Peters was a scientist working alongside Olivia Pierce and her crew during the events of Doom 2016. When a Lazarus wave was triggered, most of the facility's workers were transformed into demonic puppets, but Abraham was somehow spared. Unfortunately, not for long. Shortly after, he was found and brutally mangled by a Pinky, killing him instantly. As he died, though, something strange happened. Using some of the technology that allowed Samuel Hayden to inhabit his cybernetic body, Abraham's consciousness was uploaded to the UAC's computer systems and quickly dumped into a robot chassis. Making use of the brand new technological capabilities acquired by his new metallic body, he took the fight to the demons and began taking revenge on them. A portal to Hell had been opened, and it was up to him to lock it down. Amazingly, he was successful, and was even able to defeat a cyber demon as well. Sadly, as a reward for his efforts, Samuel Hayden deleted his mind from the UAC's records, effectively killing him for good. Other humans have tried to fight the demons as well, and though none have been as successful as those that I've already described, a few notable organizations have at least made some headway. Most notably, the Elite Guard, a specialized police force that served directly underneath Samuel Hayden on Mars. There's also the ARC, an organization also led by Hayden, whose sole purpose is to defend against the demons. If you really wanted, I suppose you could say Flynn Taggart from the original Doom novels is also a Doom guy. He can't be the Slayer because his story diverges way too much from what's seen in the games. You could also include Carl Urban from everyone's favorite Doom movie too, I suppose. Even though technically in both cases neither of them fought actual demons. Just representations of them, but that's once again another video for another time. I can't comment about Doom Annihilation because frankly I don't know shit about it. So now you know that Doom is actually filled with many heroes, and though the Slayer is the greatest among them, the others deserve recognition too. Alright, that's all I've got. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go play some Doom.